Yay, we're live.
Hey.
Hey everybody, my name is Christine Harmon and I'm the owner of Body Acumen. I help busy women commit to their self-care and discover their body's amazing healing capabilities so they can stay active, strong, and do the things they love to do. And today I have Colleen Grossner of Fresh You Consulting with me, and she is going to be talking about diet and how diet can heal the body. So welcome, Colleen. Thanks for joining me.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
Just a little bit about Colleen. She is a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, and a clinical exercise physiologist who is passionate about helping people become healthier inside and out. She has 3 children, enjoys running and playing soccer, and before Fresh You Consulting, she was a professor and coach at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. And she is passionate about plant-based whole foods, which has become a passion of mine recently too, which is I never would have thought. So I'm so excited. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you became an advocate for plant-based diet?
Well, I had to do continuing, to plant-based, and in the very beginning was, I mean, there's a movie called Forks Over Knives, which I watched after being a dietitian for, let's see, that was probably like 2007 maybe. So I was already a dietitian for 7 years, and a lot of that was very new to me because as a dietetic student, you learn about all the food groups, and like dairy, for example, you absolutely need for your bones, and so that's like my mom, when I was in college, you have to have your milk, she didn't like milk, and I was, aching for her bones, I was so worried and everything. So it was a process of learning, and I always like to base what I teach people on the science. And so really that was the first thing, is actually seeing that movie Forks Over Knives. Before that, I was already vegetarian, because any dietitian would tell you saturated fat and cholesterol, these are things you want to limit, just for your heart health.
Right.
And mainly heart health is the way it is given importance in traditional nutrition medicine. Now we know so many other things, cancer, diabetes. I mean, those 2 things, those saturated fat is key in making those diseases work well and getting rid of them to keep yourself away from those diseases. So anyway, to get to completely plant-based, I'm sorry, is this too long of an answer to your
No, not at all.
So then I was doing continuing education, and Dr. Michael Greger with nutritionfacts.org and How Not to Die, that author, he is my very favorite of the scientists. So I looked for where I could possibly, see him do a presentation. And where I found was actually all the way in California. So I'm in Ohio, and this was, a big trip, but I found out it was, so Dr. John McDougall, it was his conference, and he's been doing wonderful things with plant-based for decades and decades. And then Dr. Campbell, who is the author of the China study, and not just author of that book, but that actual research in China, which is really awesome. And Dr. Esselstyn, he's actually in Cleveland, we're really lucky to have that resource here. Those were the main ones that I was like, okay, well, I have to make this humongous trip and go. And so that was back in 2016. And I was at that conference, and I knew all the nutrition, a lot of the nutrition part of it by that point, because I had already done continuing education for the China study, which is very convincing. about how plant-based whole foods are so wonderful for our health. Cancer is a key one, heart disease, and the other factors, which I don't often even talk about, you know, the environment and well, Keeley, the environment and the animals, our earth, there were really amazing presentations on that, which I was like really astounded of how powerful our effect on helping save the earth can be just by what we eat. And so that compounded with how wonderful it is for our health. Just after I left there, I just didn't want to eat anymore. Really, I had a little bit of dairy was pretty much the only thing I had been eating anymore. So I once in a while would have ice cream as a treat or pizza as a treat. And I just didn't want to have those anymore. It wasn't even while I just thought, I just don't want to. So I just stopped, and that was kind of just, that was just it. So then my teaching didn't really change because I already knew how important it is for health. And I still, when I teach people, you know, clients, patients about becoming healthier, I talk about a spectrum. You know, anyone can make a change just in the next meal you eat to help your health. And if you have a lot of health problems, you can, you know, make bigger changes. And, you know, so it is a whole spectrum there. It's not just one way or the other. But for me, I just went all in, and it wasn't really a big change for me. Before that, I was kind of 98%, and that just went over the edge. So,
but one of the things you told me that I was really like, my jaw was dropping about, was that just by cutting out the pizza and the ice cream, didn't you say your cholesterol went down like 20 points or something like that?
More than that, actually. So cholesterol, your doctor might tell you, you know, you want to be under 200. That's sort of the gold standard out in, you know, Western medicine. Well, you know, Dr. Esselstyn and lots of others might give you a different number of 150 for your total cholesterol. If you have this number, you're sort of heart attack proof. Okay. And I had that already from all the other stuff that wasn't in my diet, right? So my cholesterol was about 150. So about 6 months after the conference and the taking out of, honestly, okay, the pizza and the ice cream were already a treat. Okay. So this was like maybe monthly things I had. I promise you, I was not like having these, you know, every day or every week or, you know, a lot. Although when I would eat pizza, I would tell you, I would probably have 3 or 4 pieces, but it probably was once a month. Okay. So it wasn't really a very big change. I promise you it wasn't. Okay. And so the number, so I had 150, and I just happened to be tested about, I think it was about 6 months later. It was no longer than that. And the changes may have happened sooner. I don't really know. I just happened to be at a health fair, got mine tested, and my total cholesterol was 111. So I was totally astounded to see that number, because it didn't feel it was more of a mental change, like that I'm not ever having dairy, you know. It wasn't like an everyday change that really happened. So that's why it just blew me away. But the China study, which, should I tell you a little about the China study?
Sure, yeah, I love that book. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who aren't familiar with it. I certainly wasn't familiar with it before several months ago.
Yeah, so the China study, well, basically what happened, the president of China got cancer. And so he wanted to find out more about cancer. And so this humongous study got put into action where they looked at what people ate and different parameters of their health, cholesterol and, you know, all the different cancers and things like that. Well, the thing about China is they have different counties, which are, there's lots of them, and the people don't really travel between counties. They really stay to their area. Like if you lived in your, it's not even as big as a state, 40 miles away, it could be a different county and you might have never gone there before. They just kind of stay put in their spot. Okay, so in each county, they have slight variations in what they eat. And they really, really looked at, we're not just talking about filling out a survey. They came into the people's houses and were measuring food quantities and really, really got a good handle on what people were eating. And here's the thing, from this county to the next, where there was a variation in total protein intake, say 5% over here and then 12% over here. Now keep in mind, in the US, total protein intake is like about 30% of calories. Okay, so 12 or 15%, those are pretty small numbers. So you'd basically think US, high protein, China, low protein, right? Like that would just be the difference. But what they found was even between the 12% and the 5%, the 5% did better on having lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of the, you know, colon cancers and the breast cancers and prostate cancers. And that was just a small, tiny little change. I mean, I think that's what I thought when I read it, and I still just associate my little ice cream pizza change with that little percentage change, that there really is no limit to how much benefit you can get from becoming more and more plant-based. You can make little changes and get little benefits, and those are benefits for sure, but you can keep on benefiting from less and less. You know, there's things like BMI measurements that they've done in the US where they look at all the different kinds of diets, like first, you know, taking out red meat and then taking out, you know, what comes next? Chicken, probably, and then, you know, the eggs, and then the dairy, you know, each of those stepwise, all the way down to taking it all out, vegan, which I don't use that word very often, but that means no animal products. And it's only the people that have no animal products that have a BMI within the normal range. The 20 to 25% that every doctor will tell you that's the goal. And that is the only kind of diet that on average gives you that range of BMI. That's not to say, you know, that there's all kinds of people that eat all kinds of different things and have different BMIs, but for the averages. So, you know, and along with those, so I kind of trailed off, but what I was thinking of is, you know, as you get less and less meat and dairy and eggs, you do have improvements, because, you know, with BMI, improvements come along too. Not that I like to weigh people very much or worry too much about weight, but it is a predictor of lots of the Western medicine diseases that we worry about. And it goes the other way too, like with nuts, for example, you have a healthier heart if you have nuts once a week compared to someone who doesn't have any at all. And, you know, if you have nuts 3 times a week compared to once a week, that's healthier in terms of lots of different heart parameters. And it keeps on going all the way to, you know, several times a day, you know, can be healthier than just once a day. So you really can make changes with every little step you take.
And that's so encouraging, right? Because being on a plant-based diet is not super easy. So people knowing that they can make a small shift and sit with it, and then make another small shift and sit with it, you know, that seems doable for people, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. One thing you said is you don't like to use the word vegan. Like, what is the difference between plant-based and vegan?
That's a great question. I mean, I like to think about what we eat. So plant-based whole foods. That's what I want to encourage people to eat every day, as much as they can of those foods all day long. And vegan just says, I don't eat, I don't eat animal foods. So I like to be positive. And so, every time I meet with someone, I really want to talk about all the great things that they do already and things that we can do, things we want to add in to a person's diet, of their daily intake. And then hopefully, the other things can get crowded out without feeling that, you're being neglected of your favorite things.
Which is why, one of the reasons why people who eat a plant-based diet are in that good range for BMI, is that you can pretty much eat whatever you want, right? You don't have to go on a restrictive diet.
Right.
So
those
that's
foods
exciting.
they're filled with nutrients, phytochemicals, vitamins, minerals, fiber, all that stuff, and lots of water, which is why it's big. The foods are big and you have to eat a lot of them to just even be full, but they are nutrient dense. They are not calorie dense. So it's a really good equation for trying to lose weight. And sometimes it's even hard for people to get enough food. That's why the Daily Dozen is so great from Dr. Greger, because, you try to get all these foods and, you don't have to feel bad about the things you're not having, but also can kind of gear you toward, so you can get all the nutrients you need. So you can get all the different, you want a variety. You definitely need a variety for a plant-based whole food diet. A vegan diet could be beer and bagels or pretzels and chips, those things are all vegan, but you have to
not whole foods.
Yeah. And the more we eat healthy foods, being a plant-based, supporter, and we feel good and, exude healthiness. It's a commercial, a cartoon, not a cartoon, a commercial for what you can be if you eat this way, So if we eat a bunch of junk, then it's not going to look like a very convincing health. And then you can tell by, energy and people's skin and everything like that, that it's not doing good things for the insides of our body if we're not making the best choices.
Yeah. Would you also recommend for people who feel like, oh, I just can't eat salads all the time, I'm going to be starving, like, to add in beans, right?
You definitely can't just eat salads all the time. We know that. I think that's a lot of times what people, when they have tried a vegan diet, they'll say, I tried that and I just, had no energy. Well, it absolutely cannot be all salads. You definitely need your beans, greens, whole grains. And potatoes. People don't like potatoes or pasta. All these things are really wonderful foods that, people enjoy, people love, especially fruits too, are things that people really enjoy. And some people think, oh, it's sugar, and, carbs get such a bad rap, but it is our energy. So that's how our body makes energy for every little cell in our body. So we need carbohydrates, and plant-based whole foods have lots of carbohydrates. So for anyone that's been on low carb and they're, sick of that, we've got another way for you to try and enjoy.
It's too bad, because a lot of these diets that have been popularized have really demonized carbohydrates, and so people think they're not good for you, and that's not really true.
Right.
So, Colleen, one of the, you spoke about how these diets are great to avoid cancers and heart disease. One of the reasons, actually the main reason that I switched to a plant-based diet was to avoid Alzheimer's. So I read this book called The Alzheimer's Solution, that were written by two doctors. Their last name is Sherzai, and they're married. And they had gone into neurology to find a cure for Alzheimer's. They both lost grandparents to Alzheimer's. And they went through medical school and they were doing research, and they just realized that Alzheimer's was just too complex of a disease to like create a pill for. And they started studying the blue zones, and what they found was that 90% of people who currently are getting Alzheimer's could avoid it if they went on a plant-based diet. And one of the things that I hadn't realized about this disease is that a lot of dementia or Alzheimer's is caused by lack of blood flow to the brain in the decades before anything ever shows up in our bodies.
Right.
So I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up because I'm not sure that a lot of people realize that your diet could affect this disease, which is really, I mean, I think everyone knows someone who has had Alzheimer's at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Dr. Alzheimer, the person who discovered the disease, absolutely called it a vascular disease and was all about that connection. And then I don't know how it happened that they got separated. You know, there's brain disease and heart disease, and I'm not sure how that happened, because, you know, the person who first found it realized that it's all about the blood flow to the brain. And a couple things, you know, just cool studies that relate to that as well. In Chicago, there was a study done that looked at saturated fat and the ApoE4, you know, the gene that makes you much more likely to get Alzheimer's. If one parent has it, 3 times more likely. If 2 parents have it, you're 9 times more likely. So it seems like you're, you know, doomed if you have this gene. Well, this study in Chicago, which was done by, you know, PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. That's another great organization. Well, they looked at, you know, people that had the gene and people that didn't, and then they looked at saturated intake of people that had the gene and didn't. And it turned out that even the people who didn't have the gene but had the highest intake of the saturated fat had the highest incidence of the dementia. That's the startings of the Alzheimer's. Also, there is a study in Nigeria, I guess, is the place where there is the greatest incidence of that gene. Mm-hmm. And guess how much Alzheimer's they have there?
They have none because they've got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my
because
God.
And this is so cool because, I mean, well, it's cool that they don't have Alzheimer's, yes, but what the gene is really, it makes certain brains really efficient at delivering cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if you have a lot of trucks that drive around in your brain and can deliver that cholesterol really well, block things up, that would be really bad. If you have a lot of truckfuls of cholesterol and saturated fat, right? But if there's nothing in the truck, even if you have the best delivery system, right? If there's nothing in the truck, then they can't go. Just like they have those big barges filled with stuff that can't get
Right.
all through the country right now. So it's really cool that even if you have a gene that makes you really susceptible to a certain cancer or Alzheimer's disease, that doesn't have to be your fate. So you really have a lot of power, which is what I love to share, that power that we all have to feel good by what we eat.
I love that. Yeah. And I think somewhere along the line, we have given a lot of that power away. We think, oh, well, inevitably we're going to get cancer, we're going to get heart disease. And so instead of, empowering ourselves to fuel our bodies for optimum health, we just kind of pass the buck and say, it's going to happen. So I might as well enjoy my Big Mac, right?
Yeah. And people don't think it, they just don't, they might think it will help, a little bit, but, it's not going to make too big of a difference. I think that's what a lot of people think. And then also what doctors think often, not to say I know what everybody's thinking in any area, but a lot of doctors think that, well, my patients are never going to do that. So they don't bother to even, if they know about, plant-based, for example. I think the ones that know about it are starting to share it. So that's really awesome. But in general, just kind of, if any cardiologist will tell their patients, oh, you have to go to a low-fat diet, right? Like they'll say that, but they don't really even think that their patients are going to do that. So then they prescribe the drugs and do the surgeries.
Yeah. Well,
so we need to give up. I was just to say, hopefully they could give us choices as patients, just give us the information, and then we can decide if we don't feel like doing that or if we want to.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece to this is that people are super confused, right? I mean, the meat and the dairy industries have muddled things up so much, and there are studies that seem to support any kind of eating habit you may want to have. And so the average American's like, you know what, I don't even know what I'm supposed to eat. And maybe they're throwing up their hands because of that.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I mentioned my mom and drinking milk, she's still, all things kind of change, all these things, you eat this and then don't. But we've always heard eat our vegetables, right? Like ever since we were a baby, eat our vegetables and fruits, so that's never going to change. And we're just finding out more and more reasons why we should.
Yes, you're right. More and more all the time, it seems like. So I know we're coming up at the end of our time, and I'm so excited to continue this conversation on November 5th. Colleen is going to be talking about healing your body with diet. And if you're listening, we'd love to have you join us then. Can you, Colleen, give us like a little sneak peek of what you're going to be presenting about?
Well, pain, I guess that could that could be a word, how we can work with pain to resolve our pain. We have a lot of different pains as we grow into our womanhood and in the upper years and stuff, and we can make that go away. So that's a key thing that I want to talk about.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited. And I had all these other questions I wanted to talk to you about, so we'll have to do this again.
All right, sounds good.
Can you tell people where they can find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. So I have a website, FreshU, FRESH hyphen, like in a phone number, YOU.com. So I have that website, and then there's also a Facebook page for that. And I have recipes and different articles and things like, oh, cranberries, why are they so wonderful for you? And you just read about that, and then there'll be a recipe at the end. And yeah, it's my little way to share awesome nutrition information with everybody.
It's fantastic because I think, I learned about the why behind plant-based, and then I literally was like walking through Whole Foods, like, what the heck am I supposed to buy? How am I supposed to cook this stuff? I mean, it's like a different way of eating, and it's not a way that I learned to cook from my mother, for example. So I love how you have the why and also the how, because I think when you make this transition, you need support. It's not easy. Not only is it not even easy to like go out to dinner or what have you, but it may also be difficult at home,
Mhm.
which it certainly has been for me in trying to help transition my family and find things that they enjoy eating. So thanks.
Yeah, my things that my recipes, for example, are usually pretty simple, quick and easy, not a lot of crazy ingredients and things like that. And kind of basic foods that people are used to, like chili or something. So it's a good resource, I think. So
Yeah, well,
hope
thank
you
you for
enjoy.
sharing. Yeah, and again, if you're interested, I'm going to put the link below so that you can join us on November 5th. November 5th is called Healing the Whole Body, Nutrition, Mindset, and Movement. Colleen is going to be talking about nutrition, and then we have two other guest experts who are going to be talking about movement and mindset, and it's going to be a magical training, and we would love to have you. It's free because this information is just too good to keep to ourselves. So thank you so much for your time, Colleen, and we'll see you on November 5th, and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
Okay, bye, take care.